Jessica Coleman had been cleaning rooms at the Bellevue Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago for nearly 12 years. At 42, the lines around her eyes had deepened. Her once vibrant auburn hair now streaked with gray that she couldn't afford to color. The luxury hotel stood in stark contrast to her own life, a cramped one-bedroom apartment she shared with her 18-year-old daughter, Abby. Every morning, Jessica woke at 4:30 a.m., dressed in her pressed navy uniform, and caught the first bus downtown. By 6 a.m., she was pushing her cleaning cart through the hotel's opulent hallways, a ghost moving silently past guests who rarely acknowledged her presence. Room service. She would call softly before entering each suite, greeting empty rooms more often than actual guests. When people were present, they usually nodded briefly or continued their phone conversations as if she weren't there. Jessica had mastered the art of invisibility efficient, thorough, and unnoticed. The Bellevue Grand hosted celebrities, business tycoons, and politicians. Jessica had cleaned suites where champagne bottles worth her monthly salary stood empty by the bed. She'd changed sheets that cost more than her rent and wiped down marble countertops inlaid with gold. The disparity never escaped her, but she took pride in her work nonetheless. "You've got a gift, Jess," her supervisor Maria would say. "You can tell everything about a person by how they leave their room." It was true. Jessica could distinguish the considerate guests who stacked used towels neatly from those who left wet towels on expensive furniture. She knew which businessmen were having affairs and which celebrities were battling addictions. The hotel rooms told stories that tabloids would pay fortunes to publish. But Jessica kept these secrets locked away. What weighed on her most wasn't the cleaning or the early mornings. It was watching Abby defer her college dreams. Despite graduating with honors, her brilliant daughter had enrolled in community college and taken a part-time job to help with expenses. "It's just temporary, Mom," Abby would insist. "I'll transfer to Northwestern next year." But Jessica knew the truth. Without scholarships or loans, Northwestern would remain a distant dream. Each night, she would soak her aching hands in warm water, wondering how many more years of scrubbing toilets and changing sheets it would take to give her daughter the future she deserved. On a particularly difficult Tuesday, after cleaning a suite where a guest had hosted what appeared to be a wild party, Jessica sat on the service stairs for a 5-minute break. Tears threatened to spill as she checked her bank account, just $157 until payday, with Abby's textbooks still unpaid. "Four. I need a miracle," she whispered to herself, unaware that in Suite 1506, that miracle was about to check in. When Jessica first entered Suite 1506 on Wednesday morning, she immediately sensed something different. Unlike the chaotic disarray she typically encountered, this room was meticulously organized. The bed was nearly made, not perfectly, but with obvious effort. Towels were hung neatly, and personal items were arranged with precision on the bathroom counter. The guest, according to her clipboard, was a Mr. James Harrington, scheduled to stay for 5 nights. Jessica noticed his expensive leather briefcase on the desk, alongside a stack of financial reports. A single coffee cup sat on the windowsill, positioned perfectly to capture Chicago's skyline. As Jessica changed the sheets and replenished toiletries, she couldn't help but notice small details. A worn paperback novel of classic poetry on the nightstand, a handwritten journal rather than a laptop, and a simple silver frame containing a photograph of an elderly woman with kind eyes. For 3 days, Jessica never encountered Mr. Harrington. He left his "Do Not Disturb" sign out during her morning shift, but requested evening turn-down service, which another maid handled. She only knew of his presence through the subtle changes in the room. Different books appearing, neatly written notes in the margins of newspapers, and always that single coffee cup by the window. On the 4th day, Jessica arrived to find the "Do Not Disturb" sign missing. She knocked softly, then used her keycard. The suite was empty, but on the freshly made bed sat a plain white envelope with "For housekeeping," written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a $100 bill, a generous tip, certainly, but not unusual for the Bellevue's wealthy clientele. What caught Jessica's attention was the handwritten note. "Thank you for your impeccable service. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee? I have a proposition that might interest you. James Harrington." Jessica stood frozen, the note trembling in her hands. In 12 years, no guest had ever requested to meet her personally. Hotel policy strictly prohibited staff from engaging with guests outside their professional duties. She could lose her job for accepting such an invitation. She carefully returned the envelope to the bed, completed her cleaning, and left without taking the money or responding to the note. But throughout the day, curiosity gnawed at her. What kind of proposition could a wealthy guest possibly have for a housekeeper? Was it inappropriate? Dangerous? Or perhaps the miracle she had wished for? That evening, after her shift, Jessica found herself lingering in the employee break room, debating what to do. As she gathered her things to leave, Maria approached with another envelope. "This came for you at the front desk," she said. Eyebrows raised and question dot inside was another note from Mr. Harrington. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Hotel Cafe. Nothing improper, I assure you. It concerns someone we both know." Jessica barely slept that night. She called in sick the next morning for the first time in 5 years, changed into her only decent outfit, a navy blue dress she'd worn to Abby's graduation, and arrived at the Hotel Cafe at 9:55 a.m. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room, wondering if she would even recognize Mr. Harrington. A distinguished man in his 60s sat alone by the window, his silver hair neatly combed, wearing an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. When their eyes met, he stood and smiled warmly. "Jessica Coleman," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I'm James Harrington." His handshake was firm but gentle, his eyes kind and somehow familiar. Jessica felt simultaneously out of place and strangely comfortable as he pulled out her chair. "I've ordered coffee," he said. "Unless you'd prefer something else?" "Coffee is fine," Jessica replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Harrington, I'm not supposed to meet with guests. If my supervisor finds out, I understand completely," he assured her. "I'll be brief. And please, call me James." The waitress delivered 2 cups of coffee. James took a sip before speaking again. "Do you remember Eleanor Harrington?" he asked. Jessica's breath caught. Eleanor Harrington, a sweet elderly woman who had stayed at the Bellevue every Christmas for nearly a decade. She always requested the same suite and left it immaculate, with small gifts for housekeeping and handwritten thank you notes. "Of course I remember her," Jessica said. "Room 812 every December. Lavender soap, extra blankets, and chamomile tea before bed. She always left Christmas cards for the staff." James's eyes glistened. "That was my mother. She passed away last year." "I'm so sorry," Jessica said sincerely. "We missed her this past Christmas. She was always so kind." "That's why I'm here," James continued. "Before she died, my mother kept a journal. She wrote extensively about her stays at this hotel, and particularly about a housekeeper named Jessica, who showed her exceptional kindness." Jessica blinked in surprise. "I just did my job." "No," James said firmly. "My mother wrote that when she was struggling with arthritis. You ran her a bath with Epsom salts. When she mentioned missing her grandchildren, you shared pictures of your own daughter. When she was too tired to go out for dinner, you brought her soup from the staff cafeteria." Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. She remembered these small kindnesses, never imagining they had meant anything significant. My mother was wealthy, but increasingly lonely as she aged, James explained. Her visits here were the highlight of her year, largely because of your compassion. In her final days, she made me promise to find you. James reached into his jacket and removed an envelope, placing it on the table between them. My mother left something for you in her will, he said quietly, and I need to honor her wishes. Jessica stared at the envelope, unable to move. Her coffee grew cold as James patiently waited for her to process his words. I don't understand, she finally whispered. Why would Mrs. Harrington leave me anything? I was just doing my job. James smiled gently. My mother saw differently. May I? He gestured to the envelope. When Jessica nodded, he opened it and removed several documents. My mother established a trust in your name, he explained. It includes $250,000 for immediate use, plus a monthly stipend of $3,000 for the next 20 years. Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The room seemed to spin around her as she struggled to comprehend the figure, more money than she would earn in 10 years of cleaning hotel rooms. This is impossible, she managed, her voice breaking. There must be some mistake. No mistake, James assured her. There's more. The trust includes a full scholarship for your daughter Abby to any university of her choice, including living, expenses and study abroad opportunities if she desires. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. How did he know about Abby? How could this be real? Mother learned about Abby through your conversations, James explained, as if reading her thoughts. She was impressed by your dedication to your daughter's education, despite your circumstances. Jessica's hands trembled as she tried to wipe away her tears. A lifetime of struggling paycheck to paycheck, of denying herself even small comforts. To save for Abby's future, and now this unexpected windfall from a guest she had simply shown kindness to. Why? She asked simply. James's expression softened. My mother believed that genuine kindness is rare and should be rewarded. She lived by that principle her entire life. He paused, then added, There's one condition. Jessica tensed, waiting. She hoped you would pursue your own dreams as well, not just your daughter's. She mentioned you once spoke of wanting to finish your education? Jessica nodded slowly. Years ago, she had mentioned to Mrs. Harrington that she'd completed 2 years of nursing school before becoming pregnant with Abby and having to drop out. The trust includes tuition for you as well, James said. Mother believed it's never too late to become who you are meant to be. For the first time in years, Jessica felt a flutter of hope for herself, not just for Abby. Could she really return to nursing school after all this time? As reality began to sink in, practical concerns surfaced. The taxes on this, I wouldn't know where to begin. All arranged, James assured her. My family's financial advisors will assist you. Everything has been structured to minimize tax implications. Jessica looked into James's eyes, seeing his mother's kindness reflected there. I don't know how to thank you or her. Live the life she knew you deserved, James said simply. That's all the thanks she would have wanted. 2 months later, Jessica stood in the empty living room of her apartment, surrounded by packed boxes. After 12 years of calling this small space home, she and Abby were moving to a bright 3-bedroom condo closer to both Northwestern University, where Abby would begin classes in the fall, and to the nursing program Jessica had enrolled in for the upcoming semester. The Bellevue Grand had thrown her a farewell party the previous week. Even guests who had never noticed her before came to wish her well after her story, carefully edited to protect the Harringtons' privacy, had circulated among the staff. Jessica ran her fingers along the worn countertop where she had prepared thousands of budget meals, remembering nights when she'd skip dinner so Abby could have enough. Those days were behind them now, though Jessica remained cautious with the newfound wealth, determined to honor Mrs. Harrington's generosity with responsible choices. Her phone chimed with a text from James. Coffee next week to review your financial plan? The advisors have some investment options to discuss. Since their first meeting, James had become not just a financial advisor, but a friend, guiding Jessica through the overwhelming process of managing her sudden wealth. His patience and kindness reminded her so much of his mother. Perfect. Thank you for everything, she replied, smiling at how comfortable she'd become texting a man whose lifestyle had once seemed from another universe. The doorbell rang. The movers had arrived. As Jessica directed them to begin loading boxes, she noticed a familiar figure approaching from the street. James walked up the worn steps of her building, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him, in khakis and a light blue button-down shirt. He carried a small gift bag. I thought I'd stop by to see if you needed any help, he offered, then added with a self-deprecating smile, though I must admit I've never actually helped anyone move before. Jessica laughed. There's a first time for everything. She accepted the gift bag, finding inside a beautiful leather-bound journal. My mother journaled every day, James explained. She found it clarifying. I thought you might want to document this new chapter. As they stood in the doorway of her old life, Jessica felt a rush of emotion. I never imagined my life could change this dramatically, she admitted. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find it was all a dream. James's eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. It's not a dream, Jessica. You earned this through years of kindness that most people overlooked. The way he looked at her sent an unexpected warmth through her chest, something she hadn't felt in the 18 years since Abby's father had walked out. Something like possibility. 1 year later, Jessica smoothed her crisp white uniform knot. A housekeeper's this time, but a nursing student's, as she hurried through the pediatric ward of Chicago Memorial Hospital. At 43, she was the oldest student in her cohort, but her life experience and natural empathy had quickly made her a favorite among both instructors and patients. After finishing her rounds, she checked her watch just enough time to change before meeting James for dinner. What had begun as friendly financial guidance had gradually evolved into something deeper. Tonight marked their 6-month anniversary as a couple, and James had promised a special evening out in the locker room. Jessica changed into a simple black dress, one she would have never dreamed of affording in her previous life. As she applied a touch of lipstick, her phone buzzed with a message from Abby. Killed my finals. Still okay if I bring Ryan home for the weekend? Jessica smiled, typing back, Congratulations. And yes, looking forward to meeting him. Her daughter was thriving at Northwestern, studying international business and dating a kind pre-med student. The trust had transformed Abby's possibilities, but Jessica was proudest of how grounded her daughter remained despite their changed circumstances. Outside the hospital, James waited by his car. When he saw her, his face lit up with the expression that still made Jessica's heart skip, that look of someone seeing something precious and rare. You look beautiful, he said, kissing her cheek dot as they drove toward the lake. Jessica noticed they weren't heading to the restaurant they had reservations for. Instead, James pulled up to the Bellevue Grand Hotel. James? She questioned, confused. He smiled mysteriously. I thought we'd come full circle. Inside, they took the elevator to the top floor. James used a keycard to access Suite 1506, the very room where their story had begun. When Jessica stepped inside, she gasped. The suite had been transformed with candles and flowers. Through the windows, Lake Michigan sparkled in the sunset. On the table sat a bottle of champagne and a familiar silver frame, now containing a picture of Jessica and James taken during their weekend trip to Michigan. What's all this? She asked, Though her racing heart suspected the answer, James took her hands in his. 1 year ago, my mother's final wish brought me to this hotel to find a housekeeper she adored. I never expected to fall in love with that same woman, to admire her strength, her determination, her capacity for kindness, even after years of being overlooked. He reached into his pocket and lowered himself to one knee, opening a small velvet box to reveal a stunning emerald ring. Jessica Coleman, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Tears filled Jessica's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man kneeling before her, man who had never seen her as invisible, who valued her not for the windfall his mother had provided, but for exactly who she was. Yes, she whispered, her voice full of certainty. As James slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to embrace her. Jessica thought of the countless rooms she had cleaned, the numerous lives she had glimpsed through left-behind belongings. She had never imagined that one day her own story would unfold in Suite 1506, from invisible housekeeper to beloved partner, from struggling single mother to nursing student and FIANCE acute. Mrs. Harrington's tip had changed her financial circumstances, but it was James's love that had truly transformed her life, reminding her that no one is truly invisible when seen through the eyes of those who care to really look.